Although ice cream has been served in dishes for years, it wasn't until the 1904 World Fair that the ice cream cone was created. And what a year it was! An ice cream stall at the fair was doing so well they were running out of plates quite rapidly, while the neighbouring Persian waffle stall wasn't faring so well in sales. The two stall owners then rolled up the waffles, putting the ice cream on top, and hey presto, the ice cream cone was born. For more than 100,000 years, humans have been playing with fire, both literally and figuratively. Just this morning, I was taking toast out of the toaster with a fork. Why would you do that? It's incredibly dangerous. But no one could create a method simple enough to start a fire until a British pharmacist tried to clean his stirring utensil. John Walker was stirring a pot of chemicals when he noticed a dried lump had formed on the end of the mixing stick, and without thinking, he tried to scrape off the dried glob when suddenly it ignited. He sold the first strikeable matches at a local bookstore with its friction lights measuring 3 inches long, which came neatly in a box with a piece of sandpaper. Today, matches are made with non-poisonous red phosphorus, discovered by Johann Edvard Lundström. The Diamond Match Company was the first to sell safety matches in America, forfeiting their patent rights to allow all match companies to produce safe matches, because safety comes first. Believe it or not, a dog invented Velcro. An actual dog. No, I'm lying. Just a joke. But the animal did have a vital role in the invention nevertheless. Swiss engineer George de Mestral was out for a hunting trip with his pooch and noticed the annoying tendency of burrs to stick to its fur and his socks. He later observed, under a microscope, the tiny hooks that stuck burrs to fabrics and furs. He experimented for years with several textiles before arriving at the newly invented nylon. However, it wasn't until 20 years later, in the early 1960s, that NASA's fondness for Velcro popularized it. Apollo astronauts used it to secure items they didn't want escaping in their zero-gravity environment. Hospitals and athletic companies eventually used Velcro after realizing the practicality of the material. In 1968, Puma was the first to use Velcro on shoes, while Adidas, Reebok, and others followed suit. The invention of Post-it notes, a favorite office supply of cubicle dwellers all over the world, was a fluke. In 1968, Spencer Silver was tasked with discovering a stronger adhesive for his employer, 3M Laboratories. He succeeded in creating a new adhesive, but it wasn't stronger. It was actually weaker. So while it was able to stick things like paper together, it wasn't so sticky as to tear the paper if it was then pulled apart. Not knowing exactly what to do with this discovery, he set it aside until one day his friend, Art Fry, used the adhesive to coat several bookmarks so they wouldn't fall out from between the pages. 12 years later, the adhesive made its debut as the Post-it note, and that's when it started to become an everyday product. Percy Spencer, an engineer at Raytheon after returning from the Navy during World War I, was known as an electronics genius. In 1945, he was fiddling around with a microwave-emitting magnetron, as you do. I often find myself doing. No, I don't. Something used in the guts of radar arrays, basically, when he felt a strange sensation in his pants. I'm not making this up. I'm not. He really did. We've all felt a strange sensation in our pants after fiddling with a microwave-emitting magnetron, haven't we, gentlemen? No, but he found that the reason for this was that a chocolate bar in his pocket had begun to melt. Acknowledging that the microwave radiation of this magnetron was the cause, Spencer is the reason why the kitchen hasn't been the same since. And also why, hopefully we're not all walking around having radiation doing strange things in our trousers. Cheers, chap. George Crumb, a chef at the Carey Moon Lake House in Saratoga Springs, New York, is the creator of potato chips, or as we call it here in London, UK, crisps. Delicious crisps, and doesn't that confuse you Americans? Oh yes, it does. In 1853, a diner kept sending his French fries back, asking the chef to make them thinner and crispier. Crumb lost his temper and simply sliced the potatoes insanely thin and fried them until they were hard as a rock. To Crumb's surprise, though, the customer loved them, and the rest, as they say, is crispy history. In 1895, German physicist Wilhelm Röntgen was performing a routine experiment involving cathode rays when he noticed that a piece of fluorescent cardboard was lighting up from across the room, despite the fact that there was a thick block between the cathode ray and the cardboard. It proved that particles of light were actually passing through solid objects, which frankly shouldn't be possible. But of course it is, if it is an X-ray. Everybody's favourite mistake was of course discovered by Alexander Fleming, a Scottish bacteriologist, who first put penicillin on the map after an incident in his lab. After returning from a 2-week vacation in 1928, he noticed that one of his petri dishes had mysterious mould growing on it. He observed that the existing bacteria in the dish did not grow where the mould grew, indicating its potential in staving off unwanted microorganisms. Fleming isolated and classified the mould. Producing large amounts of the mould itself, however, proved to be a difficult task. Nearly 13 years after his accidental encounter with penicillin, Howard Florey, Normand Heatley, and Andrew Moyer catapulted penicillin into the spotlight again when they switched the type of mould used to one that grew better, producing enough to test medical treatments. Since then, penicillin has been used around the world as a leading antibiotic. And the thing to really remember about all of this is it all came about because Alexander Fleming didn't do his washing. He didn't clean his dishes before he went on holiday. And that is why I'm not cleaning the kitchen, alright? Cornflakes were created by a horrible accident. No, actually, it wasn't that bad. It was an accident during a search for good, wholesome vegetarian food. William Kellogg and his brother John Kellogg are responsible for the world's most popular cereal. The two brothers were in search of an easily digestible bread substitute. Aren't we all? Eventually, this led them to boil wheat to make dough. Only problem for them was that it never actually turned into dough. They let the wheat boil for far too long, and when William rolled out the wheat, it separated into large, flat flakes. Disaster! However, following their baking and tasting, the brothers decided that it was a delicious, healthy snack, as you do. While John started the shipment process, his brother suggested trying the process with corn instead of wheat. The idea certainly paid off. During 1906, the Kellogg's company shipped 175,000 cases of cornflakes. The brothers experimented with more ingredients, creating bran flakes and Rice Krispies. They couldn't get them to be flakes, goddammit. But following Will's decision to add some sugar to some recipes, John left the company, believing that it went against their initial goals. Will renamed the company W.K. Kellogg Company in 1922. Oh, that poor brother. I bet he'd think that Frosties are an abomination. Chances are that right now, you can spot half a dozen plastic items without even having to turn your head. Chances are there's some of it right underneath your bottom right now. Leo Baekeland, a Belgian-born chemist who developed the first plastic in 1907, initially wanted to find a replacement for shellac, a resin secreted by a South Asian scale bug. A combination of formaldehyde and phenol, which is an acid extracted from coal tar, failed to catch on as a shellac substitute. However, he did notice that by controlling the temperature and applying pressure to the two compounds, as well as mixing it with wood flour, asbestos, or slate dust, he created a material which was moldable, yet robust, as well as non-conductive and heat-resistant. He called his invention Bakelite, referred to it as the material of 1,000 uses. Over the 20th century, Bakelite and its descendants, plexiglass, polyester, vinyl, nylon, polyurethane, polycarbonate, and so on, transformed into the stuff that the world is now made of, from natural to synthetic. Nice one, Leo. I like plastic. There, I said it, I admit it. I like plastic. It's good.